Hello, and welcome back to another episode of To Whom It May Concern. I'm your host, Malak, here with my co-host, Mariam, Inara, and Huwaila.
Hey,
Hey everyone.
As you know, as the month continues and we continue to celebrate our second year anniversary, we continue to try to get some incredible guests on the podcast so that we can discuss different topics from different perspectives. And today's video is just like those. Today's guests are going to help us discuss different perspectives and different ideas on genders. Today we have Radio DePaul's Fresh Eyes. Hi, guys.
Hey, salam everyone.
Hey guys, Assalam. Hi guys, my name is Sardar Khan.
I'm Fuzz. I'm also a host at Fresh Eyes, and excited to be here.
Hi guys, I'm Sanya. I'm also excited to be here.
Hey guys, I'm Mahmoud, also part of Fresh Eyes. You can say I kind of carry the team, so I'm also happy to be here.
We'll see.
Well, thank you guys for joining us today. So we just kind of want to get an idea of, do men and women actually think certain ways about these topics? And one topic that constantly comes up is the fact that boys and girls should be raised the same. Same like curfews, same responsibilities, same treatment, just things of those nature. And what are your kind of thoughts about that?
In terms of in my household, because obviously that's the only experience I have, I think it is like pretty even and equal when it comes to like different or like the way we're treated as, because I have one sister and there's three guys, but there's also like clear differences that I don't think my parents like even know they're doing. It might be like subconscious, and maybe it's not even, it's such like a hard concept to like grasp, because they probably not even think they're being unfair, or they probably don't think they're doing anything wrong. But at the end of the day, it might be affecting my sister negatively, even though their first priority is probably her health and safety and stuff like that. So I guess it's kind of hard because they were raised in a different time and generation. So I guess a lot of times we hear, oh, my sister or I'm treated differently than my brothers. And I think that's very true to a point. But also, I think it's important to understand that our parents are not coming from a place of like, I'm deliberately treating a girl different than a guy. I think that's how I view it.
Yeah, Fuzz, I somewhat connect to your situation, because I think my parents also do that. But the difference between me and you is that I have 4 sisters and they're all older than me. It's like if I ever tried to like pull some like, oh no, like I don't do this, I'm the guy. Especially like in Arab culture, I think there's always a difference between like how guys and girls are raised. But since like my sisters grew up here and they were born here, they made sure that I also didn't think like that, which is kind of a bit toxic. But it's sad. But yeah, my sisters made sure that like that wasn't happening in our household.
Do you guys think your parents do it? Like I know Mahmoud, you say your sisters had a little freedom, but with Fuzz, you think your parents, are a little stricter with your sister because of like safety, or is it like other things, like cultural things, or like, oh, she's out too late, what is the community gonna say? What if someone sees her at the McDonald's drive-thru at late at night, like like that kind of thing? I think that takes in play in my household. Like my parents just what they care about a lot is just oh, what are these people gonna say? We live in a small town. Everyone knows each other.
Mhm.
So if they see my sister out later, like they're gonna talk, and my mom's gonna feel that stress. So that's the main, like, that's kind of what pushes my mom for like to like keep my sisters more in check than us. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, those are the same, I guess, thought processes that I've heard in my household as well. Whenever it comes to like certain times or the amount of going out, it's like, okay, you're gonna be known as the girl that's always out, and you're never, I guess you're not really tamed in that sense.
It's interesting because I'm raised, it's just my sister and I, so we're just 2 girls in the household. And although we don't directly get, like, there's no sense of, oh, my brother's being treated differently or they're being treated better, nothing in that sense. But in conversation, when my parents do talk, when they're speaking about like my cousins or my uncles or something, they still have that sense of like, oh, well, if I had a boy, like it would be this way, versus if I had a girl, it'd be this way. So I think my parents couldn't really divide like, oh, how to treat boys and girls because they've only raised girls. So I mean, alhamdulillah, in that way, I guess we were blessed because there's like no competition or nothing to go up against. But I still think that in a way, they still believe that there are differences between boys and girls. Like if I did have a brother, he would definitely be raised differently. And I think it would have definitely affected the way I was raised also.
I was gonna say, the way I understood the question was when you say raised, I don't think it necessarily means that there's mistreatment towards another gender.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could both be raised differently, but it doesn't translate into somebody being mistreated. So I think you could raise both genders differently, but it doesn't mean that you had done wrong to another one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's hard to raise everyone the same, especially because, like, if you're thinking about like a specific thing, for example, like going out late at night, it's definitely safer for a man to go out late at night versus a woman. So if you're a parent, you definitely want your like daughter to be safe, and you know that it's probably safer to let your kid, if it's a son, go out than a daughter. So I feel like that kind of translates into like how you raise your kids as well.
I mean, also, I mean, with that example specifically, I mean, even for men, staying out late, I think also has their harms too, like probably getting activity that they shouldn't have, or maybe getting into more trouble. I was thinking more so like, not all kids necessarily to be raised the same, because I think each child has their own skill set that you could focus on, or like maybe their own things that they lack that you could help them strengthen. So I think each child, his temperament is different, like their personality is different. So you can't just be like all these like rules apply to everybody equally. I think it's the child and what like they are.
But you're talking irrespective of gender now. You're just saying, okay, this is the individual, happens to be male, happens to be female.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are specific rules that, you know, like I do think, you know, fathers should raise or talk to their child, like their son, and like how to be a husband or a man. I think that's more appropriate for a son. And then a woman could teach, you know, her daughter, like motherly roles, or, I mean, yeah, that is getting into like genders and maybe like that even that right now might be for some of us, but like stuff like that. I think.
Well, it's okay. So it's kind of easier for us to, as children or like as kids, be able to say, oh, my parents did this and I would never do this, or I would treat my kids this way or whatnot. But when you honestly think about it, when it comes down to it, do you think that you would have differentiations when it comes to your kids? Or do you think that you could fall into those same patterns as your parents, where you're thinking, oh, I don't want people to think this of my daughter, so she can't do this like my son could, or my son could be out later, you know, like, can you find yourself falling into those same patterns? Because personally, I think I could definitely fall into those patterns when I have kids. No lie.
I don't think I want to answer your question with what I say, but it just reminded me of something. Like something my sister used to always say is that if she ever caught her daughter or her son smoking, she would like give them the same like treatment, like because it like harms your health. But not, you know, in an Arab household, they tell the son, oh no, this is bad for your health. But then they also tell their daughter that it's bad for your health, but also it's like it's like it's inappropriate to do this because of like what people might think. So like I never really knew like how to think about that. So I don't know. I think it's a tough situation. I don't know. I feel like maybe unintentionally we might fall into those, you know, habits, but I don't know.
I feel like in general, we're used to seeing males smoking. So if you catch your son smoking behind your back, would you guys be just as mad as if you were to catch your daughter smoking behind your back?
I think so. I feel like despite like maybe there's a cultural difference here too. There's definitely differences in like how you reprimand girls versus boys. But in the future, I feel like maybe it's just the way my household was. I feel like I would get mad the same amount. Like I don't think I would play it would play a role whether what like other people think, if that makes sense. Like Sardar, you were saying earlier, like if your like daughter's out late at night and someone sees her, like I feel like that's not a thing in my household, at least. I can't speak for everyone, but yeah, that's why I feel like I really would treat them almost the same.
I think for me, something that's like important, and when I think about this is like sometimes it doesn't even matter, like the gender is irrelevant, and more like who the child is and like their personality on a case-to-case basis. Like for me, my sister, she's pretty sensitive and like she's emotional. So when she does something that she's not supposed to do or something that upsets my parents, they're like not as hard on her as they would be like me or my older brother, because not because she's a girl, just because she's a little bit more sensitive and like she doesn't take well to criticism or like, or if they get upset at her, like it'll really affect her like mentally. So it, for me, when I have kids, it'll more, I think it'll be like on a case to case basis. Like if I had a son that was more sensitive, I would approach the situation differently. Or if I had a daughter that could take the criticism and then I think for me it matters more about who they are as a person, less about their gender.
Do you guys think you'd have specific rules per gender? So like whether it's curfew, whether it's chores, whether it's expectations, I feel like you'd be the same for both.
Just thinking about like my household, this personally, like me and my sisters, we do not have the same chores, and I'm not sure if it relates back, to just gender norms. But for example, I don't wash dishes, but my sisters, they don't throw away the trash. Like, I don't know. I just think there is set household rules, like gender like norms that everyone stands by, and it's not like again, like kind of what Anar said. It's not kind of like hurting the other gender, or like bettering the other gender. It's just that yeah, guys have like more strength, their natural strength. They throw away the trash. I don't know, and like they take that.
I don't know. I think I'm strong enough to take out the trash.
Like
The whole 5 pounds.
But I won't fight for that chore. That's all yours.
No, I don't think I don't think everything is like, oh, like like this is your gender, this that. I think some things are just like, oh, like you're biologically you're stronger, like do that, like, or like my like say my mom wants me to like build that IKEA couch. She's not gonna ask my sister. Like, I'm gonna take that hammer, I'm gonna do it. And I'm not sure if what that relates back to, but that's just how it is.
No, I think what Sardar was trying to say, and also Fuzz, when they were talking about like chores and stuff like that, goes back to what Inara was saying. I remember what you said. You said something about how like males, like you're gonna teach your son like manly things, or like females are gonna teach their daughters like feminine things. But I feel like Fuzz, what you're trying to say is that it depends on the child, and you can't teach a lot of like, you can't, if you have a sensitive kid, like son, you don't have to force like manly things onto them. You know what I mean? So I feel like in the case of like chores, like you're saying, Sardar, with taking out the trash, if your daughter is more masculine, she wants to take out the trash, like it just depends on your daughter, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. Like if my daughter wants to.
But it just depends on the kid, what they want to do.
No, I like the way my parents raised us. They did it based off age. So like these are the rules based off the age that you are. The chores need to be done by everybody in the house because you all live in the house, so you got to do all the chores in the house, period. And I think the only difference that I see when it comes to the raising of me and my brother is my parents are harsher with my brother in the sense in terms of responsibility, because they want him to know that these are your responsibilities. Like if I slack off a little, which I don't because of who I am as a person, but they're less angry at me than they are at my brother, because in their eyes, when you slack off later in life, because I guess you're going to be the father, you're going to be the person who has to take on all those roles and responsibilities, they're harsher on him when it comes to that.
So is that fair though, that we should say like, oh, girls and guys should be treated equally, in the sense that, oh, your brother should be doing all the chores, but he also, the hammer comes down harder on him when it comes to responsibility? Like, should it also be the same? Like, if it's going to be the same across the board, why do we step back when it comes to responsibility, but everything else we think they should also share the burden with,
I think everything should be the same. I think it's by, I share the sentiment of all you guys, where it's by child. You know your child best and you know how to raise your child. And in terms of chores, I feel like that should just be everybody. I hate when it's like, oh, this is a guy chore versus this is a girl chore. Because at the end of the day, like, it's your house and everybody lives in this house. So you should all be doing the same things to keep the house functioning. But in terms of responsibility, I think it should be treated the same. And I think it does stink when someone has, or you see the double standard when the hammer is brought down harder on one child versus another.
I think something that, like, this might be controversial, don't cancel me, guys.
Controversy is fun, bro.
They're good, like they're needed, like I think that at times, like I think this is kind of what Sardar was alluding to, like if it's late at night and I take the trash out, like I'm not gonna ask my sister, or my parents aren't gonna ask my sister, just because for safety reasons, and like as a man, like I feel like you have certain responsibilities, and as a woman you also have certain responsibilities. Like I don't think every gender norm is like, oh, this is wrong, this is bad. Like a girl, she might have different responsibilities in the house, and a guy has different responsibilities in the house. That doesn't mean a guy should do nothing in the household, but at the same time, I do think there's gender norms and ways that responsibilities are carried out that's actually effective, because girls and guys are different at the end of the day. I don't know.
I agree. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's true. There are certain things that, regardless of how hard you try to fight for everything to be the same, or how badly you want to argue that we're exactly the same, the truth of the matter is we're not. Like
Yeah.
biologically, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, like we know girls and boys are built differently. It's just the way that it is. And the way that we're raised is just one difference between boys and girls, right? After you leave your parents' house, there's a whole different set of gender norms that you try to abide by. And one of them that we see a lot in Islam, especially as hijabis, or one that's always alluded to when it comes to Muslim women, is modesty, right? So a Muslim woman's level of modesty is supposedly so much more than a male's. But when you actually go back to Islam, or when you do, read the actual Quran and Ahadith and the Sunnah of the Prophet, we know that guys also come with their own set and rules of modesty. But why do you think that we're so quick to thrust modesty upon girls, but when it comes to guys, they're allowed to get away with murder, I want to say. Because it feels like that most of the time.
I think it just gets complicated when like Sam mixes with culture, and then like the man starts like interfering with like the woman's like rules in Islam and about modesty. So that's why people are so quick to jump on the train like, oh, this lady isn't like properly wearing her hijab, or she's not doing this properly. But it's really like none of their business.
I think
If you guys
even
like-
amongst women, we also see, I wouldn't say only men kind of interfere and say how women should be, dressed or acting. I think also as women, we sometimes look at each other and also kind of say like, oh, well, he's kind of being immodest, or, I think there's also some sort of toxicity amongst us women as ourselves, where we judge other women according to how they behave or act, if it's not according to our own like modesty following.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, honestly, I don't want to like be like, oh, but women also do it to like other women, so because like I honestly I don't know.
I think it's kind of interesting because with modesty, when you kind of think about modesty, you kind of think of like a white flower, like something so pure, right? But when you think about it, when you think about an attractive male, are you thinking about a white flower? You're thinking about like a rugged rock, like an attractive male. You're thinking about like a rugged rock, But when you think about like a woman, you're thinking about a white flower. I think that's what comes in. It comes from our media intake and like everything. Like I'm saying, all our environment, everything. What guys know what girls find attractive, and what girls think guys find attractive. That's what I think. That's what it comes down to, and I think that's what our parents think too. They're like, oh, like my son, he can maybe smoke some cigarettes and make him maybe look a little tougher. Maybe it won't devalue his I like to call this rishta stock. Like they're like rishta stock. He has like their stock value does not drop. Like their rishta stock does not drop if they're smoking. This guy's smoking cigarettes, but this girl smoking cigarettes, her white flower, suddenly crumbles. Like now it's a dark flower. Now her rishta stock plummets. But that's what my mindset is. Like I think that's where modesty plays. Like a feminine, like when you think about girls, you think about modesty, but when you think about guys, it's like it's different, like, with attraction. And
That's
like just
your perspective.
yeah, that is from my perspective. I am generalizing. You're right.
But,
Okay, that was
I don't know. I've never thought about women as flowers. I don't know how to explain. But
I think
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sardar just a great guy. He just loves.
Great.
Fuzz, do you agree with me? I don't want to be like the only guy. Like like say your opinion. Say your opinion.
I get what you're trying to say, but like we're just like not at your level intellectually.
Yeah.
What?
I
I'm just saying,
Can you
like, when you think,
re-explain? Like it kind of got lost. I don't know.
like I'm saying, like, when you think about an attractive woman, or like any woman that you would want to pursue and marry, you're thinking your main focus is modesty. You think of her. It just is like that's what it comes down to.
So you're saying
and I'm saying with media too. Media generalizes attractive women as like a marriage, like a woman you can marry, like as modest. Like that's the first thing you think of.
Okay.
With men, it's a little different. It's not always like, oh, they don't. The first priority is not always modesty, and it's a problem. It's a problem. It's an issue. the first thing is usually like, how much responsibility does this man take? Like how much how much stress can he tolerate? It's kind of that. It's like more different. They have different like attractiveness, like a rubric, a different attractive rubric. Like it's different. That's all I'm trying to say. And I try to bring that symbol like rigid rock versus like a white flower. That's what I was trying to connect.
Basically,
I get what you're saying.
basically you're just equating to modesty for women. And growing up, it seems like you males have not really had that talk of that's not modest.
Yes. Like and that and it doesn't devalue a man when a man is not like it doesn't devalue a man as much as it does a woman. Modesty.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously like what you're saying is true, that when it does happen to a guy, we obviously see that it doesn't affect them as much, right? Guys can do something and they just brush it off as if it was no big deal. And obviously if a girl were to do the same thing, it would have an astronomical effect on her character, on her personality. Like suddenly everybody views her differently. But that doesn't come from our, like that's our own misconstrued ideas. Like that doesn't come from Islam. That's more like how Mahmoud was saying, when we start to throw in our own personal thoughts and ideas and like standards, that's when we come out with things like, oh, a girl should only be modest and we should never talk to our sons about what modesty for boys looks like in Islam, right? Because there are certain standards that guys have to be held to. And we rarely ever hear them. Like how many people can actually tell you what the modesty standards are for guys versus everything they can list about what a girl should be doing in Islam?
It's wrong. It's wrong. I know what you're saying. I like the word you use, mistreated. Or mistreated. Like we don't like we're like guys are set at a standard that is not equivalent to girls, which is horrible. It's bad. I mean, parents, we just have to start by doing it when we become parents. We just have to, have that talk with our sons and make sure they understand that, you are set at the same like modestly value as your sister or etc. Yeah. So I agree with you.
But just like a girl has her own standards, right? I feel like we've been attacking guys. That's not the intention. We're just trying to like shed light on certain things, but a lot of things that girls have standards to, guys also, on the other hand, have high standards for other things, right? So like guys, you guys are expected to get educated, get good jobs, and be the main or the sole provider financially in a household. Like, what do you guys think about that? I mean, times are changing. Girls are now getting more educated. Sometimes they work more out of the house than they do inside the house. So how do you feel like, should guys still dominate that role as like providers of the household financially?
Yes. I know, like, I don't think this is that much of a controversial topic, but like Islamically, culturally, like any way you can imagine, I think the guy should be providing for his wife. Like that's like I said, women have roles, men have roles. It doesn't mean a woman shouldn't work. Like obviously, that I think for a woman to work, it should be her choice, but it should be a man's responsibility. Like you as a man, this is just my thought process is like you should be like the provider for your family, for your wife, for your children, because like in Islam, that's our responsibility, and like even culturally, it's like I don't know. I just don't see a way where you can get to the point where you should feel like a woman should be providing, or it doesn't mean if you're struggling that she can't, but I think it should be a man's first responsibility and priority. I want to hear what the girls think about this though.
Okay then.
My only issue is in the society we live in right now, most people can't live on a one income household. Like two people need to work. It's just the reality of like our living situation. The problem is that nowadays women are expected to work and to, help with the household, which is fine. Like you do what you got to do, but they're also expected to juggle all the house roles as well. And that's where my issue is, where they are carrying more and the men are also expected to help out in like the house roles. That's not like a societal expectation.
Makes sense.
Oh, that's facts. That was good.
I think you were saying something.
Yeah. I think that even if like a household needs two incomes, like for example, if I wanted to go get married and like I go to this girl's house and like I ask for her hand and everything. Like if I tell her parents, oh yeah, I also need her income so that we can like make a living, like I'm pretty sure they'd like kick me out or something. Like
that's true.
like I have to go in there with like a solid job and a solid income and like, you know, have my things straight. And that's like, I think those are some expectations. And as I get older, I start feeling the pressure because I'm only in the undergrad right now.
But do you think those are too high of expectations or too harsh of expectations?
I don't think they're too harsh. I think they're fine because like anyone can do it really. I mean, with the right opportunities and resources, alhamdulillah, I feel like, you know, they're not too harsh, but maybe sometimes people like I don't know, are too quick to assume like it's because some for some people like the journey is longer. Like in my example, like I'm pre-med. Like if I want to go to med school, like if I wanted to get to that level of like a solid income, like it's gonna take me a while. So like, yeah.
Like as girls, would you guys even consider marrying a guy who like doesn't value a job? I mean, this might be too blunt to ask, but
Oh
a
no,
guy
this is a good question.
job or doesn't have a plan, or he's like, oh, I want my wife to be like, yeah, exactly. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
You didn't even finish the question, and we're
You
all
guys
like,
know the
no.
question. You
I
guys already
didn't
know the
answer
question.
yet.
though.
I didn't answer yet. Jeez.
What's
Okay,
your
Mariam,
Go
how would
first.
you answer?
Well, you have to have a plan. So like for instance, let's say you're in graduate school right now, but like I know you have a plan for the future to do something. No one wants somebody who doesn't have any goals in life. That's just like a different standard. But also is we have I think a high expectations where it's not okay for you to just have a job. Like you have to have a certain job. Like so many of us in the community are like, oh, it's not okay for you to just be like a businessman, for example. Like you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be some type of educated and career and money. And I think when you start getting into all that nitty gritty, that's where you have a problem with a lot of people aren't getting married because like, oh, you are financially stable, just not enough financially stable for me.
I feel that makes sense. I think like where I come from on this topic is like if I had a daughter, it's easy for me to say, oh, the job doesn't matter or the title doesn't matter or his financial status doesn't matter. But if I had a daughter, like I would want her to get married to someone who's financially stable, who's like who has a good amount of money, who has like status. I'm not status in terms of like cultural, but someone who's like has like a high education level. So there's no worries that like if whoever I'm giving my daughter to like at any point won't be able to take care of her. And I think that's where like when I was talking about earlier, the gender norms that are healthy and like and they make sense is like at the end of the day, my point is I know nowadays we need two incomes in a household to survive. Maybe not to survive, but to have like a happy and healthy financial life. But if the wife can't work or if she doesn't want to work, the man should still be able to provide for her. And I don't know, maybe I don't know if this is controversial at all, but I just think the man should no matter what the circumstance is, be able to provide for his wife and his children.
And that's fine. I just think it's wrong when we skew the fact that we look less at someone's religious value versus their like economic value.
Yeah.
And even if they bring to the table so much like Islam, like they're so good, you know, they do all the right things, but your income is like 50 grand. And then they're like, oh no, not high enough status for me, not financially stable enough for me. And then you get mad. So that's where I have a problem. I think society's shifting too much to focus on an income versus like who that person is religiously.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree that obviously religion is the first thing that we should be looking for, like going into the future. But it's so easy to just say, oh, this much will suffice. Like you also have to think that everything else is important, like deen is important, and that stuff is definitely important. But you also don't want to, you can't like I can't imagine parents seeing their daughters getting married off and living life the way they have or the experiences that they've had and being able to know that their daughter's gonna maybe struggle financially or that this will always be a burden on her and her husband and on their household and just kind of go with the flow. Like that's so naive, and I feel like it does weigh pretty heavily, as it should. Like I think it should be pretty important.
Okay,
And I do.
But let's say the girl is educated with her own income. Then does that change who the type of guy that you'll accept?
I think for most people today, it definitely does. Like I think girls today are raised to be kind of independent because your parents are always telling you like, no, you should get an education, you should get a good stable job because just in case something happens in the future. God forbid this happens, God forbid this happens. You still want to be able to provide for yourself. So often, or at least the girls that I can say I personally like I'm surrounded with, or the people I'm surrounded with, are more like go-getters, determined, planning on graduate school so that they can also help to provide a good lifestyle for them and their families. Like, I don't know many people that are getting educated just so that they can like hold all this money and not support their husbands also, or the house. Like, times have definitely changed. Like, it's changing. Girls have been getting educated and working outside of the house more, and it's changed in like them taking responsibility and helping out also.
I have a question. Would you guys, if a woman came up to you and she was like, oh, I want to pay for something, or for example, a house, like you're married and she wants a house that like you on your income can't afford, but let's say she has a higher income than you and she wants this house, would you guys get the house? Or would that like demasculate you in any way?
No, I think in a marriage, like your money is her money. I mean, Islamically, obviously, her money is her money. But like speaking just like from practical terms, like in my mind, when you're married, like your money is just combined. Like there's not like the money belongs to one person. So I wouldn't be opposed to that at all.
Yeah,
I mean, it depends. I think it depends on how nice the house is. Like, if I like the house, I mean, how badly does she want the house? Like, and is it gonna be that much of a burden? You gotta ask these questions. Like, buying a house is like a big deal, you know? Like, if I really don't like the house, and I really don't like it, I don't want to buy the house. And I mean, I wouldn't buy the house. Would you guys buy the house? I don't know.
Okay, let's bring it
all
down to a
depends.
smaller scale. Let's say a wedding thing. She wants flowers that cost like $1,000 per table,
If it's
and
extremely
you
in
can't
furniture,
afford that. Yeah, she wants
yeah.
it. She wants it,
I'm
but
not.
you can't
Yeah,
afford it. So she's like,
like
I'll pay for it.
let me say this: the only reason I would say no would be financial reasons. It would never be because of my ego. That's what I would. That's my go-to. Like, if she's making if she's making a bad financial like mistake just for like 1 day wedding, like a 2 hour 1 hour event. I mean, I know it's important to her. So okay, yeah, I'll say yes. I'll say yes. Yeah.
You're a king, Sardar.
Sorry, I gotta think through these things. You know, you just can't say no. You can't just say yes to everything. You know, you gotta ask these questions. You gotta ask questions.
Right. I have a question. We just talked about, oh, a man's responsibility in a marriage is generally to provide financial, the financial aspect of it. But what do you guys think the woman's responsibility in a marriage is? Because I don't think that's talked, or it's not easy to talk about.
Yeah, it's hard to define it.
Yeah. So I don't know what you guys think about that. Does anyone have any thoughts?
More for traditional. I know a lot of women probably like this, but I do think that I'm all for the traditional, like the main provider is the man. And then when it comes to kids, I think if there has to be a decision made, I think the woman should stay at home and focus on raising the kids. I see nothing wrong with that. And I think we need to focus on the kids and really raise quality children instead of like sending them off and not really spending quality time, because I feel like they are our future and we need to invest in them. And there's nothing wrong with being a mother either. But yeah, I think one of the main responsibilities of a woman is to take care of her children. Not to say that the man is like neglectful and doesn't do that either, but I think if like they both should be involved in raising the kid. But if one has to do the main like job, yeah, I think the man should solely be, bringing the finances. And I think
Think of it more traditional.
yeah, I'm all
Yeah.
for more traditional. I don't.
And the way I look at it is I'm not against any way. I guess the way I think of it as the couple decides.
I agree with
So
you. Yeah.
they both figure out, okay, we're both working. Let's say some women don't want to work, and that's completely fine. She can stay at home. And then I feel like if you stay at home, you naturally take on the home chores, raising the kids. But let's say you guys both decide that, okay, we're both gonna work, then it doesn't become like man responsibilities, woman responsibilities. It's like, okay, this is what we do together, and we don't do the same things because that just doesn't make sense. You do, let's say you take out the trash, I'll do this. You do these house duties, I'll pay these bills, you pay these bills. So then you just start dividing it up so that you guys can make it work together.
I definitely agree with that. I think people need to stop thinking of it's like, oh, your role, my role, and it's like, what do we need to do to survive at this point? Like, we're a team.
You need to thrive.
What's our outlook? Yeah,
Yeah,
survive then
right.
thrive. But the only problem I have with Inada's point of view is that when people say, oh, I like traditional, a lot of people associate that with dads take a handoff role. And even just watching their kids, they start calling it like, oh, I'm babysitting right now. Like, no, these are your kids. You're not babysitting. Like, these are yours. And I feel like then everything they do for the kid is looked at in like such a spectacular thing. Like, oh, they changed their diaper. You're such a great dad. Like, even the most minuscule things are looked at as so grand if you look at it in traditional sense. And I think that weakens a child's bond with their father.
Mhm. Yeah, by no means do I mean like as long if you're taking care of like the finances and getting a job that you're neglectful of your children. I think there's definitely like fathers need to play a huge role in the child's life, and being involved in raising a child definitely takes both parents.
I guess to be like more specific about my question is like, do you think there's like specific roles a woman should have, or is just on a case-to-case basis?
I think I was gonna go back to Inara's point. And I understand where you're coming from for the traditional thing, but I feel like it places blame on women way too much. Where, let's say a woman can't have kids, or she doesn't want to have kids at this point in her life, then she's not doing her role. You know what I mean? Like it kind of places the blame on her. Like, oh, he's providing, but you can't have kids, so you're not upholding your end of the marriage. And I feel like that's why I agree with Huela, because it feels like if you're in a relationship with someone, you have to like talk to your spouse and understand what they want, what you want, and really like adhere to each other instead of what traditionally it should be. Or you know what I mean? Like it just depends on the case.
I feel like a lot of times we do default to those traditional roles though. So like
Right.
even if we're both working, let's say when it comes to certain chores, the woman will most likely do this because we've just been like programmed to think that way and to behave that way.
Like what Inato is saying is the traditional sense of how to like build a home and how to raise children and whatnot. But I think even the traditional idea of how to build a home and how to raise your kids has changed. So like even though you're a mother that stays at home and the husband works, I don't feel like you hear so much about fathers not taking such a role with their parents, right? Like the generations before us, the fathers were out of the house from 6 a.m. and would come back at like 9 p.m. You didn't really have much of a relationship with the kids. The kids were in bed. The mom had already taken care of the day. But it's not so often today that you hear, oh, fathers aren't spending weekends with their kids or aren't getting home at a certain time to see their kids, or, so although it's still more traditional than we may be used to or we may envision our futures, I also think it's come a long way from what tradition used to be versus what tradition is now. Okay, what is the first thing that comes to everybody's mind when you hear the word feminist?